Welcome everybody to Hiker's Dream. I'm Landslide, and today's special guest, is Dr. Jessica, and she's going to be talking about foot and ankle care on trail. And the show supports hikers and hiking and the environment. So we're really happy to have Jessica on because she's part of the trail magic, trail angels that give support to hikers, especially in the health department. So maybe you can give us some background to start with, Dr. Jess, about what you do,
Sure.
what you have done.
Sure. Hi, guys. And I thank you so much for having me, Landslide. It's a pleasure to be here. And I'm excited to be able to talk to hikers. So I'm a physical therapist and I'm a hiking injury recovery specialist. And I live in Big Bear Lake, which is mile 266 of the PCT. And about 3 years ago, well, it was 3 seasons ago, I started trail angeling, just giving rides. And then I had a few injured hikers in my car. And I didn't really understand what the PCT was. I knew what it was, but I didn't understand the role that Big Bear Lake played in it. I didn't understand why there's hundreds of strangers walking around with their backpacks. And so I stopped one day and picked one up and started to interact. And I just absolutely loved the whole community, and I loved what they were doing. And as a physical therapist and a foot and ankle specialist, it was just this perfect matchup. So when I first started driving and I had these people in my car, I actually had 3 different people in the first weekend that were injured. And so I could tell they were injured and I could see by how they were walking and what was happening. And so I told them that I was a foot and ankle specialist and a physical therapist, and then is it okay if I help you? Like, may I treat you? And they were like, absolutely, because they were concerned about not being able to continue on the trail. And so I treated all 3 of them. They were different types of injuries. One was plantar fasciitis. One was, I believe it was an Achilles tendonitis, and the other was posterior tib tendonitis, so on the inside ankle. And they all were better pretty immediately and were able to get right back on trail. And
Mm.
so, yeah, it was really kind of cool. And I was a traditional therapist working in clinic, and so I hadn't really had experience just out with minimal, right? Minimal. All my new patients were minimalists because they're hiking across all these miles with their backpack on their back. So it helped me to understand and to tap into my minimalist therapist as well. And I primarily just use my hands anyway. I look at movement pattern and look at what's missing as far as quality movement and what can we do to restore limited movement, and then release tissue, teach them how to move in a way that's efficient and take away old compensating patterns, and then off they go. And what I realized is that's what I love, and that's what really works, is just minimal, minimal, minimal. And my goal became to it's always kind of been my thing anyway, is that I feel like my purpose, my job is to teach people how to take care of their own bodies. And I've been doing this for 31 years, so I've discovered lots of things and I've developed my own treatment method. And my goal is to teach people how to tap into that themselves, give them the skills and the tools so that they can look at their own bodies, assess their own bodies, and see what's missing and see what they need to do to maintain good movement patterns and strength to be able to go off and do whatever it is they want. And with this population, with the hikers, they're my favorite
Mhm.
because I love, love, love the adventurous spirit. And I love that
Mm.
they're just willing to do hard things, and they're just, whether they're afraid or not, they just go and do it, and they're tough. And the fact that they're taking on this insane, beautiful journey is just, I
Yeah.
love that. I'm a day hiker. I'm not a through hiker. And part of me is just like, I'm so envious of their grit and their stamina, and they're just, let's get it done. And I see where I can have, play a role in helping them to be able to do what they want to do. And so I absolutely love that. So when I had those first original 3 people that had the injuries, one of them was traveling with her best friend who was an occupational therapist. And she looked at me and said, Jessica, you need to start a mobile clinic. And I thought she was crazy. And I was like, because I was in clinic, I'm like, mobile therapy, what are you talking about? And so I said, oh, no, no, I couldn't possibly do that. There's no such thing. What are you talking about? You're crazy. And then I thought after she left, I thought about it and I researched and I'm like, nobody else is doing this. However, what's interesting is Morgan, with Morgan, the physical therapist with Blaze Physio, she was starting at the exact same time, but I didn't know about her yet because she was actually on trail and I was in Big Bear. So I didn't know that there was even such a thing. And so I thought about it for about 20 minutes and I was like, I'm going to do it. I have my license. I have my insurance. We're good to go. And so I just started finding the hikers and went on Gut Hook and just started seeing hundreds of hikers during the season in our small window here in Big Bear Lake because they're really coming through from usually like mid-March through June is I'll have hikers come through. And this is a real pivotal place. And there's so many injuries that I'm seeing here. A few hip and knee injuries, but they're primarily foot and ankle injuries. And it's interesting because from the hiking survey, it clearly stated that over the last 3 seasons, 37% of the hikers that started in Campo, they don't make it through the desert section, the first 500 miles. And so I believe that. So, I mean, I wonder how many injured hikers aren't even getting to me here in Big Bear Lake. And so when I read that statistic, I was like, man, okay, I'm in the right place. And if, our goal is to complete this journey, but not just to complete it, but to complete it like epically, right? It's like, if we're going to do this, let's do it right. And I find that, obviously you can't do that if you're injured. If, injury is the number one thing that takes people out takes them off the trail so they can't complete. And so what I've realized is that, people are preparing for their food. Obviously, you have to have your food all dialed in and they're preparing for like the logistical things and their equipment. But many forget about the most important piece of equipment, which is their body, because without that being healthy and strong and able to handle the crazy amounts of miles and the intensity of what they're doing, then the rest of it doesn't even matter if they can't stay on trail. And so my job is to give people the information that they need to prepare for the hike. And then obviously I'll treat as people injure because not every injury is preventable. Some injuries are just accidents, but I find so many of them are preventable. And so my goal is to teach people and make them more aware of what they do have control over and take that control back. And with just a few simple assessment tools and a few simple skills, they can assess their own bodies and manage their own bodies to keep them healthy, to keep them on trail.
Now, do you travel then? Are you mobile and travel, or do they come to you in Big Bear? How does that work?
So right now, when I say mobile, I live in Big Bear and we're, about 30 minutes from trail. And so I'll go to them, pick them up, treat them lots of times just in my car. Right now, I don't travel outside of Big Bear very often. I sometimes will get phone, like calls or texts or whatever from people that need me to go get them. But when I say mobile, I just mean in my car, I go get them. I'll go to their Airbnbs or the hostel or wherever the hotel rooms, wherever they're staying. So I'll go meet them because, as you well know, they don't have cars. And it's not so easy getting into Big Bear. And so that's what I mean by mobile is I'm not in a physical clinic. I'm working from my car and I go to them. And sometimes it's just the Vaughn's parking lot. It's wherever they are. It's at the post office, wherever they can get to and I can get to meet them. So that's what I mean more by mobile. This season, I'm also going to be in Tehachapi. My daughter just moved to Tehachapi, and so it's about 3 hours, 2.5 to 3 hours from here for me. So I'm going to expand. I have to figure that out. I haven't quite figured out the logistics of that, if I'll be there certain days or just later in the season, but I'll have a better idea of that when it comes. But I'm not like Blaze where Morgan, where she travels the entire trail with them. I'm definitely not doing that. I'm definitely based out of Big Bear Lake and then can go close areas here. Yeah.
Now, how do you deal with compensation for your services?
Yeah.
How does that
So,
work?
yep. So I'm all cash basis. I don't take insurance, but what I do is I'll create a receipt for people because lots of them have
Go ahead.
lots of them have like travel insurance, and so they'll pay cash or use Venmo or PayPal or Zelle, with whatever works for them. I take different payment so sources, so that way and then I'll write them a receipt if they need that, and that way they can submit that receipt into their travel insurance, and I include the codes that they need to be reimbursed so that it's actual physical therapy service as it is, and that way there won't be issues with their insurance. So yeah, that's how
Right.
yeah.
Okay, so it's interesting your therapy and how you manage that. Now, I forget the lady's name. She's Indian, but she does primitive posture. She teaches yoga and
Mm.
primitive posture. Forget her name. She's very well known in Northern California. She works out of Palo Alto and Stanford, but she teaches people how to sleep, how to sit, how to walk, you know, she shows these pictures of the primitives, the indigenous people, and they're always like their spine is, they're strong and they're straight. And she
Yes.
teaches just through that how to prevent surgery on your back primarily. So it
Yep.
sounds like that you're doing something like that with aligning, helping people align their foot, ankle,
Yes.
posture. Do you teach them how to
Yeah.
walk, or how do you do that?
Yeah, so I've been doing this for so long. I've been a therapist for 31 years, and I also became a Feldenkrais practitioner, which looks at all of that. But
Mhm.
I've kind of morphed into my own kind of a style now. And I realized very quickly that our body is meant to move in a certain way. We all move in a similar quality way. And what I noticed was that I had a foot and ankle practice, physical therapy practice called ankle and foot physical therapy for 17 years. And I only treated people with below knee actual diagnoses. But like what I noticed was where you have your pain and where you have your injury isn't the problem. It always comes from either just above or just below. And the part that's breaking down breaks down just because it's doing extra work that it's not intended. And so that's where the breakdown occurs. But it always happens because there's something dysfunctional above or below. So even though I was treating just below the knee, I learned very quickly that it has everything to do with what's happening with the alignment and how the entire leg works. Obviously, the whole body, but I really look at the alignment of the hips versus the knee versus the ankle and how that's working. And what I noticed was that when there are two pieces, so when a person has either a foot, ankle, or knee issue, literally every one that I've seen has a limit in their ankle motion. Because so when we have a lack of good, called dorsiflexion, when we pull our foot back, when we're lacking the ability to bend in the proper way at the ankle joint, because that's where the motion is meant to come from, then people will compensate. And they compensate by either bringing their feet wide or turning them out or turning them in, or their whole knee will fall in. And they're just trying to gain motion from somewhere because we're mobile, active humans and we want to keep moving. And our brains are so crazy smart that they figure out a way to keep us moving. But the problem is our nervous system doesn't know the difference between good quality movement and poor quality movement. It just knows, let's move. And so we start to develop these funny patterns over time that we aren't aware of. And so what happens is like I just said, is when that ankle doesn't move, we have to gain the motion from somewhere else. So it's those compensating patterns which cause the breakdown. And so the first thing I look at is how they're standing and just what is their pattern, and then mobilize the ankles. And so I do a technique where I can physically mobilize the bone, just takes a few moments. And then I release all the tissue around the area that's been tight because of the limited motion, and then have them stand and walk and move and teach them how to first stand and kind of to engage muscles that haven't been engaging because they've been in a funny pattern for a while. Yeah. And that's really the crux of my whole treatment as I look at the three different pieces, as I look at their movement pattern. Well, first of all, honestly, I always look at the movement pattern first to get an idea of what's happening and to teach them to recognize what's happening. And then I'll mobilize almost always the ankle joint. Sometimes it's also the hip, and then release the tissue and then teach them how to move differently. But I also teach everyone how to release their own tissue if it's a place that they can reach and they can do. Because my whole goal is to get people, yeah, see me once, see me twice, maybe, but I want them to have the skills and the tools and the ability to treat themselves. And I can't follow everyone, get in their back pocket on
Mhm.
all their journeys. And so I want them to have the tools and the skills and the ability to take care of themselves. Yeah.
Welcome, Mimi, to the show.
Hi, Mimi.
Mimi's co-host here.
Morning, my alarm didn't go off. I was up super
Hi,
late last
Mimi.
night. It's nice to finally see you, Jessica.
Nice to meet you as well. Hi. Good morning.
Good morning.
Jessica, I'm wondering, is there any feedback on the hikers that you treated, to any percentage or any feedback at all about the rest of their journey from Big Bear on? I mean, did you get any thank yous or like we made
Oh my
it?
God. Yeah, lots.
Because of
Yes,
you, we made the finish
yeah,
line.
and that just makes my heart happy. And I ask that people, they leave and then I don't see them. And I hate that because I get very connected with people and I really care about their journey. Like that's why I'm doing this, is I really care about their journey. And God gave me this special gift and I found a group that it's perfect for.
Mhm.
And I just want to know, how are you doing? Did you make it? How was the journey? And so I do, and that just makes my day. I love to hear back from the hikers and how they're doing. Another thing that I love is I ask that as they leave, especially in the first week when they're back on trail, if they have service, obviously, to text me and let me know how they're doing a few days out, a week out, so then I can help them with the transition back onto trail. Because depending on how injured a person was, it depends what the injury was, right? Not everything just clears up in a visit. Typically, if it's just the beginning of plantar fasciitis, the beginning of Achilles tendonitis or posterior tib, all the tendons around the ankle, if it's just the beginning of those things, often what I do will just resolve it and they're fine to go. But those that are injured, it's a little more of a process to get them back on trail because their injury needs to heal before they get right back on trail and
Mhm.
pound that part again and expect it to do a job that it's injured. And so there's a process in getting people back on trail sometimes with certain injuries. And so I love getting the feedback and I love having the conversations so I can help them to know what to do and what's kind of normal to expect from their injury and how to transition back onto trail.
So basically, you're teaching them how to align better, right? Align their structure, and then
That's
from
the
there they can do
Yeah,
it themselves,
yes.
basically. Mhm.
Yes. And another really huge piece of that is I'm really teaching them how to pay more attention to their bodies, not just the alignment. The alignment's what got them into the trouble they're in and the patterns, but also how to manage their tissue. So what that means is like, I believe that our nervous system, like our fight and flight system, our sympathetic system, I believe that there's a part of that system that people aren't aware of. And I feel like when we overdo something and we start to get tension in our tissue, either knots or soreness or, all like those beginning warning signs. Well, I think what happens is that people don't understand that it's just that. It's a warning sign, and that it's our body's beautiful way of letting us know, hey, kiddo, something's going on. I need some attention. Can you pay attention to me? And what I've noticed that happens is that when we overuse a part, what happens is a trigger point gets activated. That when that trigger points are just these structures within our muscles, they're permanent structures. When they're turned on and aggravated, the tissue becomes very, very tense, and that's when we get the soreness. And I believe that's what causes the majority of the pain that we have. And so that trigger point's either turned on or it's turned off. When it's turned off, our tissue's soft and supple and in its natural resting, meant to be way. It's nice and soft and supple. So what happens is when we overuse and do something too much, the trigger point turns on, sends a signal to our brain sends a signal back down to the muscle that it lies within, and it creates a tension. That tension is what keeps those trigger points turned on. And so when people feel, oh, it feels tight, it's not usually tight. It's usually that there's tension in the tissue because there's a trigger point. That's what I teach people. And then I teach them that stretching a trigger point adds more tension, makes the whole thing worse. It's not going to resolve the problem. It's not that your muscle is tight. It's that there's tension because of the trigger point. So I teach them all the soft tissue releasing so that they can self-manage. So that once I teach them the alignment, they're not going to get the alignment perfect right away. And they're walking 20 miles a day. So to be able to hold perfect alignment, 20, it's crazy. And that's kind of absurd, right? That's why I'm really trying to reach the hikers now before they get on trail, so that as they're training, they're learning these movement patterns now, because it's not going to just happen overnight, and their body's not going to be able to handle that all of a sudden overnight for 20 miles a day. In fact, that's kind of ludicrous, right? And to expect someone to do something brand new right away all day long, they're probably going to have more stress on that area. So what I'm really trying to do now is to prevent, and give people the tools to change that pattern now, and the tools to be able to then, when they are on trail or as they're training, right? Because most of us are going to get new aches and pains as we're training because our body is getting used to all this new activity. And then I want them to have those tools to be able to manage the tissue when it first kind of taps you and talks to you, rather than it develop into an actual injury. So that's my whole point is, yes, the alignment. So it's really a three-pronged approach, and you can't, you will not have really great results. Each individual piece will help, but all three things have to happen. You have to have normal motion at that ankle and hip joint. You soft, supple tissue that you're able to manage and handle yourself, and also then the movement pattern and be able to fix that. But that takes a little bit more time to integrate into your system. Does that kind of make sense? Of it's all those pieces. And I really want people to understand their own bodies and be able to just manage them. And we're fully capable of doing that. We just haven't been taught that.
Reminds me of Dr. Bates, eye specialist in the 20s, the 30s. Tension was the cause of most eye problems, even glaucoma, all these eye problems we have because of the squinting. We're always squinting, and his idea was to relax the muscles around the eye, sunning exercises, palming, different things. But the idea was tension, was the cause. So that you're addressing that too.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And that makes perfect sense because of all the eye muscles, the eyeball can't work properly and
circulation, cut off.
Yeah, if it's not, that makes good sense. Interesting.
Yeah,
Maybe.
I think it's interesting too, because I feel like societally, and I don't know if this goes across all cultures, but I think we're so ingrained in you just keep going, right? You don't listen to your body. In fact, you teach yourself to ignore your body's signs because of this pressure to keep going. And I think it's really interesting. I watched a little bit of one of your videos, and you talked about, hey, when you're walking and if something doesn't feel right, it's probably a sign maybe you need to rest. Like that should be your first your first indication. And especially I think with this hike, we're also, oh, I gotta do 20, I gotta do 20, and I just love that you're encouraging people to no, don't just keep pushing because it's gonna probably get worse, right? And so just pay attention to those first signs and take action then. And then I love that the pre-training part of it. I just don't understand why your your message is kind of the first thing I've encountered in this area. And it's such a fundamental part of being active and trying to attempt this challenge.
Yes, yes. And I'm so glad you brought that up. So glad you brought that up. My biggest issue with people is that honestly is why I see so many injuries is that they don't. So exactly what you talked about, a couple of things is that they don't know how to interpret their messages that are coming in, but a lot of them don't bother to stop and listen. But there is also a lot of pressure on trail. There's so much pressure by these, I say kiddos, a lot are older than me, but all the kiddos is, they by this point in at Big Bear Lake, that because that's really my experiences here at the first 10%. But there's so many solo travelers, and so their tramily is such an important, really important, critical piece of their experience. But I find that they get paired with strangers they don't know them, they don't know each other, and there's a lot of pressure. So meaning they don't understand what they're capable of, right? They don't know their bodies, they don't know their hiking experience. They're just like, hey, you're cool, let's hang out, which is beautiful, and these beautiful relationships develop, which is incredible, and I love seeing that. But I would, if people listening to this that are going to do the hike this year, is that you it's all about you and your body first. Of course, the experience and the tramily is amazing, but if you don't listen to your body, if you don't take care of your body and do what you need to do, you won't be able to stay with them anyway. And what I find is there's a lot of pressure to stay together. Well, there might be people in that group that are seasoned hikers that are, they're extremely active and they're acclimated already. They live in climate and they climb mountains all the time and they're perfectly capable of doing 20 miles a day. But what I try to really emphasize is that this is just the first 10%. And people, if you don't hear anything else, start off slowly. Start off slowly, because you're not just walking, 8 to 10 miles a day to start off. You now have a pack on your back that you're probably not used to. And how many people, so let's go back a step. How many people even stand for 8 hours a day? How many people even do that? A lot of people, most don't. So if you can't even stand on your feet 8 hours a day with no pack on, how are you expecting your body to carry a pack standing for 8 hours a day, walk on uneven surfaces, walk up and down mountains, handle elevation? You're not sleeping, you're not eating, you're nervous, you're out in a new environment, all the things, right? And it's like, I think people don't understand the major strains and stresses that are being put on their body that they just aren't used to. And that to expect them to do 20 miles starting off is just nuts. And I looked at the kind of the statistics, and if you're going to walk this hike in 5.5 months, the average, and that's with a day off a week, and that's with throwing in 7 days of having to be off trail for all the lovely things that happen in life, it averages out to 20.2 miles a day. Averages out. So that, because at the end, and there's going to be certain parts of the trail, you're going to be able to do 30 miles a day. And so people get so hung up on, but I have to, but I have to, but I have to. And what they're not realizing is by pushing, their body can't handle it. They're not going to be able to continue. So like, it doesn't make sense to me. It's like, come on, guys, like really look at what your body can do. Start off easy. And what they don't realize too, I know it's for myself, is it's the cumulative effect is where a lot of our breakdown happens. And so they might think they're fine for, 20 miles the first 3 days, and then they can't walk because the accumulation of what they've just done. And people also don't really understand the effects of uneven terrain on their foot and ankle and hip and knee. They don't understand that. And that is its own beast.
Dr. Jess, let me interrupt you. I'm sorry. My Zoom account is 40 minutes. So we're just about,
sorry.
I've got a free account. So our 40 minutes is just about up, but let's do a part 2, maybe later in the season, the hiker season, and see what's up. Maybe in March, maybe, or so. Let's talk again.
Sounds great.
Hikers are starting to flow through, and you'll have more experiences and stories to share. So, no, I appreciate it. This is really good information and really good.
Thank you.
Did
May
you
I
talk-
share one more thing really fast? Oh,
Mhm.
sorry, Mimi. Is I wrote a book for the hikers called Happy Feet, Happy Hike.
We'll
The
post it in
ultimate
the in the edited video. We'll post that. Yeah.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Because in there, it's my whole method, exactly how to take care of their bodies and what to do. And I'll be hosting workshops, and I created an online course that will be available in a week or so. That it's an 8-hour long course that people can go through. It's all video where they can learn how to do all these pieces themselves in the course, and then they can work with me as well. Yeah.
Wonderful.
I'm excited for the season to start.
Aren't you having a free workshop tomorrow?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
I'm giving a free workshop tomorrow. It's 11 a.m. Pacific time. I'm in California, so my time. Yes, it'll be 90 minutes, and it'll have a Q&A at the end. Yeah.
Where's the
super
best way to get information on the free little workshops that we can try out?
The best thing is to go on to my website, and it's just my name, jessicalach.com, and it's JessicaLLACH.com.
Thank you,
Yeah,
guys.
and there'll be lots of information. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jess. Thanks, Mimi.
Thank
We'll talk later. Bye.
No.